Hey, it's Josh again. Josh Bloom. If you were expecting someone else, I am not to the place yet where I am bringing in guest hosts. But if you are looking for that kind of experience, let me try something. Hey, it's Josh. Josh Bloom isn't here this week, so I am filling in for him. My name is Josh Bloom. And I know what you're thinking. Josh Bloom got a guest host named Josh Bloom? Yep. He did some searching in the phone book and found me and called me via landline telephone because I am into vintage communication methods, not devices. My landline phone was manufactured in the 2020s. Methods. For instance, I also use cups and strings to communicate, but the cups are red solo and the string is fiber optic. Now that I am thinking about this, however, podcasts are not in my ideological wheelhouse. I must hang up. Hey, it's the original Josh Bloom again. I am recording on Friday morning again because I like it. So, is the podcast late now or on time? I say on time. If you hear the landscaping company in the background, now you know why. They cut grass during the day, which is a dead giveaway. I told you last week that I was getting some sleep, but I didn't really get some sleep, and in fact, since then, I have gotten even less sleep. I consider this some kind of strength training. I know the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but I tweak that slightly into I am going to be made stronger by trying to find out what doesn't kill me. I have been successful so far. For instance, there was the summer that I fasted for 42 days, one day longer than Christ. I don't even believe in Christ, but I believe in beating him at his own game. I know that a man of infinite wisdom and forgiveness will not hold my competitive nature against me. By the way, I ended up in the hospital after the fast, but not because of the fast. It was because I ignored the instructions on how to emerge from the fast properly. I was made stronger by the experience and also by the unexpected bonus challenge of weathering the indignity of my brother mocking me as I lay in my hospital bed. I hope to discuss this with him one day. This book. The book I have been discussing is wrapping up. I will be continuing towards the home stretch as soon as I am done talking with you now. I am very excited to call myself an author, and I will because I strive to call myself names that are accurate and verifiable. Previously, I felt like I could confidently call myself a jerk, and now I will be able to confidently call myself a jerk author. Wow. If my parents could see me now, that means they have risen from the dead, and in my mother's case, from the Hudson River, which we threw her ashes off of. Look, if you had not scared away my guest host, you would not have to be listening to this increasingly sad and morbid introduction. By the way, if you want more sadness, then don't buy me a coffee. But if you want slightly less sadness, make a small $3 donation by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Josh Bloom. Again, it's only $3. I mentioned that my therapist bought me a coffee last week, and it seems he is now a regular listener, so I am using this forum to tee up our sessions. Maybe I should insert some Easter eggs to see if he is really listening to the whole show. Let's try. I am thinking about renaming my cat to, oh my God, I am so depressed, help me, which is in no way a projection of my mental state. I will let you know if my shrink brings this up. I doubt it because he knows my sense of humor and would not dignify this lame podcast padding. This is episode 41 of the Josh Bloom Was Going to Turn It Over to Another Josh Bloom, but is too much of a control freak to even turn it over to a made-up Josh Bloom podcast, also known simply as the Josh Bloom Podcast. It is the latest edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, days 180 through 186. There was a lot of fun stuff going on with the leader of the Trump administration this week, so I have included 2 additional TikTok posts in the program that received lots of views and comments. They were fun to do, and I like to provide that fun for you. This week on the show, I started out on day 180 by revisiting the perfect call I discussed last week with my friend that lasted 2.5 hours. I had forgotten that she kicked me out of the house once because I wouldn't leave. This was during a more entitled time in my life, and because I am working on vulnerability, hello therapist, I wanted to tell this story. I allude to Lou Reed, so you don't want to miss it. On day 181, I hip you to Cruel Shoes by Steve Martin, but that's about as joyful as it gets because I go dark quick in discussing the cruelty of, well, you know who. This is basic ignoring the Trump administration's stuff. We have to endure the insufferable, which, now that I think about it, literally makes it sufferable, so it's not as bad as I thought it was. Listen to Cruel Shoes. It's dark too, but literally joyous. Keeping it menacing on day 182 when I diverge into a discussion of bullying and how that is related to an experience I had buying ultra-processed cheese product. What if the band Ween had an album titled Chocolate and Ultra-Processed Cheese Product? Not so catchy. That is why I have never been asked to join the band Ween. But really, I stood my ground at the grocery and you get to hear all about it. On day 183, I am sorry, but I continue to discuss cruelty and bullying. Wow, I'm shocked. I was in the mood this week to remind everyone to defend ourselves against those who would disrespect our boundaries. Little did I know that later in the week would come a defense of us all that would blow these worries and concerns away, at least for a day. I mentioned 2 different songs by The Doors, too. No, not the one about getting it on with your mom. Sorry, pervs. On day 184, I say I'm sorry again. This is about my claims that the leader of the Trump administration doesn't care about us. I came to the conclusion that of course he cares. He has to care if he is going to try and manipulate us for his own gain. Obviously, I am being sarcastic, but it is a wake-up call nonetheless. Believe me, even after 184 days, there are plenty of folks who still don't get it. On day 185, I make like Ferris Bueller and take a day off. Except I don't. My day off is symbolic. I want to step aside from the daily grind of considering how we live among some intolerant people who wish ill upon us. They are weak, and we are strong. In addition to Ferris, I reference dudes with loud trucks and why their trucks must be so loud. Hilariously, on day 186, the reason the dudes must have loud trucks is exemplified in the season opener of South Park, which I saw all of the relevant clips of on TikTok. Let's just say that the leader of the Trump administration's reason for a loud truck was a very, very tiny portion of the show. You know. Listen to the end for all of the small details. If you want to watch a compilation of all of this week's original TikTok posts, including the bonus posts I mentioned at the start of the show, they are compiled in one video on YouTube. A link is in the show notes. You can also reach the Buy Me a Coffee link in all of my social media by going to superjews.com. That's superjews.com. Thanks again for listening, and now, let's get into 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I might be back later. I have never guaranteed I would be back, so please consider this a Josh Bloom podcast cliffhanger. Spoiler, I will be back. Day 180 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru, and I have never received a bawdy birthday card. I'm just trying to help myself. The other day, I told you about a perfect call that I had that lasted 2.5 hours, and it didn't even occur to me at the time that perfect call is a phrase that the leader of the Trump administration says about calls that he has that are very not perfect. My call was actually perfect. There were no implied threats on my call. Do you know the song Perfect Day by Lou Reed? It was used perfectly in the film Trainspotting. You should know both if you don't. Both of these medias are arguably perfect. Unlike the first 100 of 1,461 days of the Trump administration, I'm talking about the actual administration, not this video series. I will leave it up to you to decide how perfect this is. But anyway, back to my phone call. One of the reasons this perfect call was a perfect call is because this call was with a person I have been friends with for a very long time, and we've been through very difficult life experiences, not only in our own lives, but with each other. Once I was going through a breakup and I wanted to stay at her place while I was getting over it. She let me stay a bunch of days, but finally got sick of me and told me it was time to go, and I got an attitude about it. Like, hey, I'm suffering, and that's all that matters. And she was like, nah, bro, I did you a solid. Now suck it up and beat it. Can you imagine if the leader of the Trump administration heard that on the other end of one of his perfect calls? Actually, I think that is what he heard when he called Rupert Murdoch at the Wall Street Journal yesterday. But anyway, back to my phone call. To have a perfect call for 2.5 hours shows how two people can incorporate the difficulties that have occurred in their friendship into the friendship in a way that makes the friendship a better friendship. Leading difficult lives with a history of trauma makes trusting people difficult and can make friendships difficult. Pushing past those difficult times when you know your friend is worth challenging yourself for is a rewarding experience that results in a perfect day because of a perfect phone call. I doubt that the leader of the Trump administration will be inclined to do the same with Rupert. He hit him way too hard with that Epstein birthday card, so now they will go to war, and we will go to ignore the Trump administration. Day 181 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. My name is Josh Bloom, and I'm just trying to help myself. I am pretty sure I told you that. I'm pretty sure. Can you believe it? They believe it. Can you believe it? The leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration believe in what they're doing. They believe in it. I don't like to point this out, but these are cruel people. Not cool, cruel. Although I'm sure other cruel people find them cool. Have you ever heard the short story by Steve Martin entitled The Cruel Shoes? It's wonderful. The leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration are the human equivalent of the footwear that Steve describes. You have to be cruel to be able to do what they're doing because it hurts people. I have received comments over the past couple of days attempting to equate Barack Obama's deportations with those of the leader of the Trump administration's deportations. When I point out the nuance of following the law in a dignified manner versus breaking the law in a demeaning manner, guess what? The commenter ignores my explanation as if they are me ignoring the Trump administration. Barack Obama is just a man doing a job. Donald Trump is just a man doing a job. The difference is that the latter enjoys being cruel. The vast majority of people are not cruel. But in this particular case, the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, a gathering of some of the most prominent cruel people in public life, have managed to assemble a cult following and convince them that they are benefiting from this cruel rule. See what I did there? That was fun. While some supporters are unaware of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration's cruelty, some not only are, but their own need to express cruelty is vicariously satiated. This is only temporary, however, because cruelty is a bottomless pit. There is no bottom, but there is an end. As we have seen throughout history, it always comes to an end because, again, the vast majority of people are not cruel. In fact, those who may harbor such impulses are aware that cruel behavior is not accepted by society. Some people choose to go to the next step of awareness to get those impulses under control, to come to terms with why they have those impulses, and to deal with the trauma that created those impulses. You can deal with the cruelty if it ever arrives at your door. For now, stay mindful, optimistic, and hopeful, and continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 182 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. Mister, would you please help my pony? I'm just trying to help myself. Have you ever had to deal with a bully? Here are a couple of examples of dealing with a bully from a micro to a macro level. Macro, like mac and cheese. Isn't that fun? That reminds me of the album Chocolate and Cheese by the band Ween. Are you familiar with Ween? Well, if you have had to deal with bullies, you should at least treat yourself to some Ween. Today, I was at the grocery store and I went to buy some individually wrapped fat-free American cheese slices. I realize that this is a very trashy product, but these slices are low-cal for a low-cal gal. And even though I am not a gay who refers to myself as girl or sister, I will stoop to an easy rhyme. They are low-cal and melt easily on my delicious chicken burger. I typically buy the store brand, but the Borden brand was on sale, and when I went to pay, the sale price did not ring up. But you know what? Ya boy knew this would happen. See, I switched back to boy because we don't let people like the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration bully us and dictate how we self-identify. I knew it would not ring up correctly because it did the same thing a week ago. The checkout person, I don't know if they go by gal or boy, just keeping it real, trusted me and took the discount off, probably because of the color of my skin, if I'm being honest. But this time, I took a picture of the tag on the shelf with the sale price, just in case. This time, when the sale didn't ring up again, I alerted the gal or boy and showed the picture. The clerk zoomed in on the tag and showed me that it said the sale ended on July 10th, which explains why the sale did not ring up last time or this time. Do you know what I said in response? That's not my problem. Because it's not. It's the store's problem for leaving the tag on the shelf. On a micro level, we should not tolerate the supermarket trying to bully us into paying a higher price than what was advertised. On a macro level, just like mac and cheese, isn't that fun? We should not tolerate the leader of the Trump administration trying to bully us into paying a higher price than was advertised. He costs us too much already, and while he is cheesy and melts easily, he is not low-cal and he tastes like shit. The moment I said that's not my problem to the clerk at the supermarket, I received the sale price. I don't expect that kind of cooperation when we arrive at the other inevitable confrontation. So for now, please take my advice and ignore the Trump administration. Day 183 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am not a rider on the storm. I'm just trying to help myself. Why not start out the week light and continue our discussion of cruelty and bullying? I guess that's not so light, huh? Well, at least it reminds me of the song Light My Fire by The Doors, a very light band that did not take themselves seriously at all. That comment was sarcastic. Jim Morrison was not known as a very silly dude, if I am not mistaken. And if I am mistaken, I expect some cruel bully will let me know in the comments. Anyway, back to the subject of cruelty and bullying. As I have stated previously, the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration seem to enjoy being cruel. They like bullying. That is what people like this like about themselves. They believe that this is how you win at life. But the fact of the matter is that they are simply acting out to satiate their need to hate. It is part of their being. There is no strategy other than to satisfy the need to express hate. And they will keep doing that until we are done with them doing that to us. Cruelty never wins. History shows us that hatred never wins. But it also shows us that there is suffering before hatred loses, and so cruel bullies must be dealt with. When I say I am ignoring the Trump administration, I am saying that I am ignoring the negative effects that it attempts to have on my life. Whether or not those effects come to my door and I have to deal with them directly is one thing, but they must be dealt with in a global sense eventually. It's like that cliche of punching a bully in the face. You can't punch a bully in the face from 10 miles away, so in that 10-mile space, we have to live. We have to keep on keeping on. We can't let the effects of the bully's behavior take away and undermine the life that we are trying to lead. If and when that bully gets in our minds, we don't become cruel, but we become unkind. Cruelty and hatred will never win. So for now, turn away from the leader of the Trump administration's shit-eating grin. As Jim Morrison stated in another of his songs, try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Deep words from a guy not really known for fun, but they are valid thoughts to think about as you ignore the Trump administration. Day 184 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I want to apologize. I may have given the impression throughout 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration that the leader of the Trump administration does not care about Americans. I apologize for giving that impression. He cares very much about the citizens of the United States of America because we annoy him. When I say we, I mean me as someone who opposes the leader of the Trump administration, but also his followers who not only do not oppose the leader of the Trump administration, they deify the leader of the Trump administration to the point that quite likely some of them would give their life for him. The reason we all annoy him is because we are a means to an end, and that end is power. And as Chuck D and Flavor Flav of Public Enemy so eloquently state, we must fight the power. I believe I have made it clear, but it is worth mentioning again on day 184 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration that there is only one answer as to why the leader of the Trump administration does what he does and says what he says. For all of the pontificating by pundits, for all of the podcasts and news broadcasts and discussions in various coffee shops around the country about why the leader of the Trump administration is the way he is, there is a straightforward answer, and that answer is that he enjoys, is driven to, and is inherently in need of acting out his deep-seated anger. His behavior is that of a person who is driven by grievance in every fiber of their being. Now that he has achieved as close to God-like power as one can achieve, he has realized that he still feels completely consumed by anger. This is not a mystery. He is angry all day, every day. Nothing satisfies his hatred. That is why we annoy him, because in order to maintain his earthly power, he has to appear to be doing something, and the only thing he wants to be doing is ruining people's lives. That is what he cares about because it makes him feel good to hurt people. So I apologize today because if I gave the impression that the leader of the Trump administration did not care, I was wrong. He cares very much because it is very irritating to him to have to try to maintain his base of loyalty in order to keep his power while also being constantly infuriated by those of us who continue to point out his shortcomings. If there comes a time when he is able to keep his power without keeping his followers, he will no longer care about us because he will have total control and can use his power at every whim. Until then, please accept my apology and continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 185 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. Life moves pretty fast. I'm just trying to help myself. I am here with some news. Just like Ferris Bueller, I am taking a day off of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. What does that mean? If I am taking the day off, does that mean that I am not ignoring the Trump administration today? No. It means that I am symbolically taking the day off from 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration because that is what this project represents in theory. And by doing this today, or not doing this, it represents it in action too. The reason I began this project is because when the leader of the Trump administration was elected again, I was scared. I am a gay man. I am a Jewish man. I lived for a time in the Midwest and experienced anti Semitism. I was closeted until I was 30 years old, which was only a few years ago. Don't I look young? But really, don't I? But really, again, the leader of the Trump administration and their followers are intolerant people, and intolerant people are scary because their intolerance is based in anger, and that is based in fear, and fear is based in not liking themselves for whatever reason. In the case of most intolerant dudes, it's because they thought about a dick once or twice. But really, again, I am taking today off because I am not feeling scared today, because I am reminded of how weak these people are at their core. We know they are weak because of how they constantly have to prove how not weak they are. And you know what? They never prove it. When I am at the gas station and some dude who thought about dick once or twice and now has to fire up his ridiculously giant lifted truck that breaks the sound barrier to overcompensate for that, I know that he's about as tough as a child throwing a tantrum for attention. He can't take a day off, and he can't take a day off from himself. There is no vacation. He is permanently stuck as an intolerant toddler supporting the Trump administration. Last night on South Park, Donald Trump's junk was portrayed as very, very small. Teeny tiny junk. Now, if South Park can go ahead and portray Donald Trump's teeny tiny junk, what is stopping the media or anybody from just saying to him, like, what's the deal? Saw on South Park, you have very tiny junk. This is the kind of fighting fire with fire that has to happen. I love Michelle Obama. I get when they go low, we go high. I get it, girl. But in this case, with what we have seen since you first made that eloquent statement, as all of your statements are, Michelle, in this case, it would be appropriate for journalists to look Donald Trump right in the face and say, Sir, do you have a comment? If I were there, I'd say, sir, you've heard of Mr. T. I am comparing you to Mr. T. Then I would say, but you're more than Mr. T. You're triple T. You are teeny tiny Trump. And when I'm talking about teeny tiny Trump, I am referring to teeny tiny Trump's teeny tiny junk. Day 186 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm going down to South Park. I'm just trying to help myself. Last night, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the creators of South Park, unleashed a season opener that eviscerates the leader of the Trump administration by animating his very teeny tiny junk while he lays in bed with Satan. Now, I would like to talk about something much more uplifting to close out the week, but it is hard to ignore what is going on today with the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration as things appear to be unraveling. Then I realized that South Park dunking on the leader of the Trump administration's teeny tiny junk was pretty uplifting by itself. As I said, it looks like the Trump administration is unraveling today, but by tomorrow it could look like we are once again firmly in the grips of authoritarian rule by a narcissistic nincompoop. At the moment, however, what is going on with the legal exposure of the leader of the Trump administration regarding his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files is just too delicious to go without commenting on. Currently, in the court of public opinion, both among people like myself who oppose the leader of the Trump administration and with the followers of the leader of the Trump administration, this issue seems to be as sticky as the leader of the Trump administration's ugly blue suit pants after an evening of throwing ketchup at the White House wall. I am having a good time watching this happen. It is breathtaking. I originally wanted today's installment of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration to be about my quest to become a more vulnerable man, to the point where I asked ChatGPT how I could make that happen because I made this video before my therapy session, so I couldn't ask an actual human being. And ChatGPT gave me some answers that are quite elucidating and that I will be considering on my journey. But unfortunately, today, my vulnerability is based in telling you that when I saw South Park's portrayal of the leader of the Trump administration's very tiny D, I laughed, I pointed, and I felt great about myself. And if that is what vulnerability means, then so be it. Because at the time, I felt a little embarrassed about the fact that I was so gleeful. But now, I have to say that if any relief is on the way from having seen Donald's D looking smaller than castration, it would have been worth it all on day 186 of ignoring the Trump administration. No wonder Melania salivates over good-looking dignitaries. She seems so happy around other men, not so much around Pencil D. I believe Melania is a woman with needs, and I do not believe those needs are being satisfied. I have a suggestion of a nail in the coffin that will close out the Donald Trump era. That suggestion would require Barack Obama taking one for the team and the approval of his wife. I think you know what I am getting at, but if Melania is truly sick of Donald's tiny wee, Barack could give her a little of the BBC. Hey, it's Josh. I'm back. I said I'd be back. I couldn't just leave you hanging like that. Please, for the love of Christ, who does exist as a character on South Park, seek out the clips of this incendiary episode. It could result in the leader of the Trump administration's brain imploding in an insignificant puff of 4th of July sparkler dust. In other words, not much, because his brain is not much. His brain is also mush. Can mush explode? I want to see the not much mush dust. That was fun to say. Thanks again for listening. Please leave a 5-star rating for the Josh Bloom podcast in your podcast app and leave a comment saying that you like the show. Don't forget to follow, and I assume by now you have told all of your friends about the Josh Bloom podcast, so now let's move on to telling acquaintances. Like people you run into now and then. So when you run into them the next time, say, "Oh, hey, I remember you. You seem like the type of person who would enjoy the Josh Bloom podcast, which is hosted by Josh Bloom and sometimes guest hosted by Josh Bloom." This will confuse that person enough where they will ask you what the hell you are talking about, and you can say, "I'm just talking about the Josh Bloom podcast." He communicates via modern communication devices, unlike his disloyal guest host. Thanks for doing that. Lastly, visit me everywhere for everything by going to superjews.com. That's superjerjews.com for links to all of my social media, and visit superjews.substack.com to subscribe to my Substack, which contains all of my long-form writing. Subscriptions are free, or for a small monthly donation, you can support my work. It helps a lot. Thanks again for listening. I will see you next week.